Yeah.
Having to work for a living
Is
thing too.
there any coffee on this ground level, or
I don't know if they brought some in. Yeah, I might have to run.
I'm just gonna leave that rolling for a minute. I'll be back. Hopefully it'll capture stuff. Thanks for doing that. What's up? I'm out here. Secret yeah. I'm not. Cool shirt, dude.
Man, I've never been here for CoCoFEST with so many cameras on
They're everywhere. Hide from them.
Well, in the interest of fair warning, I have known the shadow lenses on cameras. For a long time, I constantly screaming at us really kind of
I don't understand why that was done.
They're paying they come down and do it.
Okay, I'm here to talk about a little bit about the CoCo FPGA project I'm working on. Gentlemen, everybody ready? I just made up a couple of quick slides last night. We just kind of go over, most of it will be a question and answer. Thanks. If any questions, just knock it in tonight, and we'll try to answer them. You can kind of see it here on this first page. I just took a quick picture using my phone of the setup. Got the DE1 board. You can't see it. Can't see me poking at the screen, can you? It's got the DE1 board down here. And on top of that is this new analog board that we just created. Interfaces a couple of joysticks, PS2 keyboard, it has regular sound, computer sound, and then a VGA monitor. That's pretty much the entire setup. The standard feature set that it has is there's a version of it for the Altera DE1 board, which is actually by Terra ASIC. And then there's a Xilinx version, the Spartan 3 starter board, which is actually from Diglent company. D-I-G-I-L-E-N-T or something like that. Diligent, okay. It uses a 6809, a soft core written by John Kent in Australia. But that's the only piece of this that I didn't write myself. Everything else I've written myself. The standard SRAM that's built onto the DE1 board is 512K. The Spartan 3 starter board actually has 2 meg on it already. I emulated all of the standard video modes. Everything I know of, there's still a few bugs that pop up, but everything that I know of that the CoCo 1, 2, and 3 all do, all the video modes are all supported. And something I did a couple years ago, the 1793 disk interface. Right now you could use just a standard disk controller ROM, and it thinks it's still talking to a disk interface, but then that disk interface converts everything over to drive wire, and then it gets disk images off of a server. But there is no changes. My first version of it, I had it to where I modified disk basic to talk over the serial port, but I found out that some things didn't use. They use their own built-in routines, and the first one was Orchestra 90. It used its own built-in routine, so it no longer would work. You could play what was built into it, but you could never load any files to it. So that's when I decided to go ahead and do the 1793 disk emulation. So now you can load up a disk image on your server and read in the files. It has a built-in multi-pack. It's got the Orchestra 90, slot 1, a Nitrous 9 CoCo boot in slot 2. Slot 3 is, well, we'll go into that a little bit later. And then slot 4 is the disk controller. Has dual joysticks and an additional serial port. The extended features is the CPU no longer is limited to 1.89 megahertz. It'll run at a full 25 megahertz. Previous versions have run at 25 megahertz, but every time the video needed to read, it had to stop the processor. It halted the processor for a cycle. Well, that's no longer true. I've now increased it to where it's running at a full 25 megahertz. The video reads are done on the opposite part of the clock cycles. And I've extended the video modes. I went ahead and implemented the 256 color mode. It's different than the legendary one that nobody's been able to ever get into, but it does pretty good. And I've extended the video resolution out to 640 by 450. It's a double number of double number of vertical lines, and then 640 horizontal. The addition of the new analog board, it gives you 4 more meg of memory. That's 2 things that are on there. There's a 2 meg memory on the top and a 2 meg memory on the bottom. So you get 4 more additional meg of memory. The DE1 board itself can be modified to include a second, or actually replace the 512K with another 1 meg part and then add 1 more wire. So you can get the total up to 5 meg of memory. Nothing really uses 5 meg, but the capability is there if you ever wanted it. We might create a Nitrous 9 disk, RAM drive using that, because if nothing else is going to use it, we'll try to do something with it. But that's still kind of in the works. We now support SD cards booting from the SD card in Nitrous 9. We do not support reading in images from Disk Basic, even though there is a guy starting to work on that. We'll have to see how far he gets on. He's been kind of slow here lately, but life gets in your way, We now have a real-time clock. It hasn't been implemented, but that should be fairly simple to do. So, right now we have real-time clock built in, and the slave processor that I use for the 1793 emulation goes over drive wire, gets the time, and updates that. But then you still have to have a drive wire connection, and then people are complaining that they don't want to have a drive wire connection. So that's why we're doing the ST boot and stuff like that. So we went ahead and added a real-time clock, so you no longer have to type in the time every time you boot. And there's a Wi-Fi module down on top of the analog board. That Wi-Fi module, it runs at about a megabit serial link, so it'll never be super fast Wi-Fi, but it's faster even than the 25 megahertz CoCo is. So we're planning on going ahead and just replacing the serial port drive wire with that. But other people would say they would prefer to have it where they can do their own stuff with it. So whatever you guys want is fine with me. Memory copy assistance is a new feature that we've added. Now that we have so much memory, up to 5 meg, copying and doing bank switching and stuff like that is kind of a pain in the butt. So it's always been a pain in the butt, but now that we have so many more banks. So what we did is we added in I added in a thing where you can program a from address, a to address, and then there's some static or some couple bits you say if you want to auto increment it or not. And then you just keep reading from an IO location, read from an IO location and write back to an IO location, and that will actually read from that beginning address and then copy it to the other address. So you just keep reading and writing, reading and writing, reading and writing to the same address. So it makes memory copies much more, and then the address are auto incremented. You can auto increment both of them, or you can turn either one of them off. So you could be reading, let's say you wanted to write a disk controller that read always from the same location, but wrote to an auto incrementing output address. You could do that. Or, if you're reading a sector into the disk controller, you could auto increment the beginning address and target address not auto increments, it would be set. So any questions about that one? It was a little more difficult to understand. I plan on including soon a feature for that to where you can actually, you set the beginning address of where you want it to auto increment or not, and an ending address of where you want to auto increment it or not, and then a length, and it will auto copy it for you. That is a feature that will be added probably in the next couple of months. So then you just set this up, tell it to go, and the go will be writing the value that you want, the number of bytes that you want copied, and then there'll be a status bit out there somewhere that says, okay, I'm done. And it'll still cycles from the CPU. When the CPU is not using the bus, then this copier will go ahead and copy the memory for you. So you won't be doing other things and expect that memory to be changing. In this third slot, we have what we call a multiple ROM system. There was, John, I think his name was, and he used to run a website called gimmechip.com. I don't know, he's disappeared now. I don't know what's happened to him. But they had spec'd out a multiple ROM system where you could put like a big ROM in there, and you did a couple of pokes on different banks and stuff like that. So you could have a whole ROM or a whole bunch of different ROMs in the same slot. And you could switch between them, and there was, supported bank switching, for the ROM packs, 256K ROM packs that included that. He included all that in there. So we implemented that. As far as I know, nobody is using it. But, if the instructions are there, if you ever want to use it, and if there's 2 meg flash, you have plenty of room to load all these additional ROMs. You go to there, set it up, and you can boot any one of those ROMs. The sound, we support the Orchestra 90 sound, that's 8-bit sound, but we actually have 16-bit capabilities. There's the two memory locations that the Orchestra 90 uses, and there's 2 additional ones that actually give the lower level bits, or least significant bits. So we actually support up to 16-bit sound. It was brought to my attention yesterday there's probably a bug in that, so I have to fix that. But right now you have to do 2 separate writes. Well, that's going to create some issues with that, since you're not updating the high bit or the high byte and the low byte at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and modify that to where you can write the low byte, and when you write the high byte, it'll write all 16 bits at once. But that'll be here sometime pretty quick. The joystick interface, it's actually, you get it still has the 6-bit normal interface that the CoCo uses. But there's some locations that you can peek and actually get up to 12 bits on each one of them. So that's up to what, 4096 resolution on the standard joystick. And the extended joystick or the enhanced joystick or something that Radio Shack had out for the Color Computer 3, it doesn't use that because that thing was a real timing hog. It took a lot of time to actually for it to do the conversion. This thing is done for you automatically. You just read a couple locations and there it is. I think that's pretty much everything I've got to talk about. Well, downsides. Yeah, at the present time, people have complained that you have to tether it to another machine for drive wire. Almost everything runs off of drive wire. I don't know. To me, drive wire gives enough features where I want to run it. But other people have different thoughts about that, so.
If I could interject on that, I find that, you have to power the board anyhow. So
Yeah.
either you get the power supply and you plug it in, now you're tethered with the power supply, or if you use the USB with drive wire, well, that powers the board, so.
Right. So, to me, it doesn't make a big difference. I mean, I don't have any place to set it up where I don't have access to the machine sitting right next to it. Drive wire is not a big CPU resources. So I can just run the drive wire task as another task. I also have a Shiva plug that's running drive wire. you know, that I can set up on a network anywhere. And that's one of the things I put the Wi-Fi module on there for. If I want to take the CoCo FPGA into my bedroom and hook it up to my TV, which my wife probably would object to that, but I could do. If I wanted to do that, then I could keep the Shiba plug like on a network in any room and be able to boot it up. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you talk about all the bits and pieces you have to gather to have a working system?
Yeah. Need a VGA monitor, a PS2 keyboard, and either the DE1 board or the Xilinx board, whichever one you want. The DE1 board is much further along than the Xilinx board, but I'll get them, I don't know.
What about programming the two boards?
Yeah. You have to install the Quartus programmer. You don't have to have the full Quartus, but you have to have the programmer. And then you come to the Yahoo group website, download the code, and set it up and program it out.
The programmer is a hardware device?
No, it's built into the DE1.
Oh, okay.
It just takes a USB cable. You just hook a USB cable between your machine, your server machine or whatever, and the DE1. It powers the DE1, and then you can program it that way.
Do you ever think about porting it over to like a DE2 or any other Altera products?
Other people have done that. I have complete open source on this. You can do whatever you
Yeah,
want.
that's right, you do.
Yeah, and other people have ported it over to the DE2. I don't have a DE2, they're kind of pricey, so I've never done that, but I'm thinking about doing it fairly soon.
Yeah. Now, the DE1s are getting harder to come by nowadays.
DE1s are getting hard to come by. Yeah.
Is there still the preference for the older DE1s?
The older DE1s had the older SRAM on them, and the new DE1s have a different SRAM. And we've had issues with that, and I haven't been able to figure out the magic solution for getting that to work yet. And there are people that did the Atari's emulation in FPGA, they haven't found a solution to it either. So I'm not alone here. A lot of people are having trouble with that one. So one of the guys on the group has gone ahead and gone through and will take your SRAM off and put a new one on there. It's a nominal charge. I don't think he really charges anything except for the price of the SRAM and shipping to and from to him.
You just said group, what group are you referring to?
The Yahoo group.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Could you go into a little detail on what the issue is?
And the new SRAM has an ECC on the address bus.
Error correcting code.
Yeah, right. And for some reason, it delays the reads long enough where the reads do not set up properly in time.
Okay.
And we're pretty time critical because everything runs as if the processor's running at 25 megahertz all the time. So because the memory reads the bus the rest of the time. So we only have 20 nanoseconds to read the memory, and these are 10 nanosecond SRAM. So anything that would delay them just a few nanoseconds, it causes them to not read correctly. So we haven't been able to, the signal integrity on the DE1 board is not that great. So there's been some issues with that. Like the I2C CBUS, normal I2C CBUS, if you want to write a 0 out to it, then you just pull it low. But if you want to write a 1, then you just let it float high with the pull-ups. Well, the DE1 won't work that way. You have to write the 1 out on the clock. And I haven't figured out why, but it's got to be a signal integrity issue.
Is there anything extra you need if you wanted to hack on the code as well?
If you want to load the full version of Quartus, then you can hack on the code all you want.
Is that, how much does that software cost?
It's free.
Oh, okay.
It's a free download.
You have to register with them, though.
You have to register with them, right?
And then they check the license every once in a while.
Right, yeah. But yeah, I'm using the free version because it's several $1,000s for a real seat. But for that several $1,000s, you do get the capability of compiling the code with multiple cores if you have a multiple core machine, which almost everything is nowadays. Right now, I do it with my laptop. It's got a single core. It takes 10 minutes or something like that to compile, 7 to 10 minutes. But if you had, 4 cores, you could probably cut that down to 2 minutes. But it's not worth $3,000 to me to do that, so I just use the free one on that.
I think the purchase one also allows a computing file, module.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. 'Cause I've never used it, I don't really know.
Could you clarify something for me?
Yeah.
You need the IBM computer to run the compiler?
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
you could, yeah, IBM, you can use Linux or,
Okay, so
Yeah.
that creates a file. Could
Right.
that file just be put on like a Raspberry Pi to download into the DE1?
no.
You need the,
Yeah, you need the programming software, which only runs under Windows or Linux.
probably way too big to fit on the Pi.
It's not too bad. It's 4 meg or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a banger and it needs the Intel chip.
Gary, is the IO processor, is it running that bandwidth, the 25 meg, or is it running slower?
You're talking about the processor that does the disk emulation? It runs at 12.5 megahertz.
12.5 meg,
Yeah.
and that's based upon, you told me this before. and I can't-
6502.
6502.
Yeah, I use the 6502 because, the 6009 is a really, really nice processor. It has lots of registers, lots of addressing modes, and it takes a lot of FPGA resources for that. Since the disk processor was a fairly simple device to do, it could use a very simple processor, so I chose the 6502 because I knew how to program it already and it was easy to do. And it doesn't take very many FPGA resources.
So Gary, can you talk a little bit about the segregation of features between the DE1 board and what's on the analog board? Because when you answered
Yeah.
Tim's question earlier, you said all you really need is the DE1 and the
Right,
and the monitor and the keyboard.
Yeah, that's the kind of the first slide I had up here. You get, all these features are what's built into the standard FPGA without the analog port. Except for the serial port and the dual joystick port. I guess those last 2 things are not there. So you could have a fully functional, CoCo 3 with the disk, running drive wire, with the SD card, multi-pack, Orchestra 90, all that stuff's all built into the DE1 board. The analog board gives you the additional serial port, the joystick ports, the 4 megs of extra memory, and then there's a prototyping area on there, and a real-time clock and the Wi-Fi module.
Are any joysticks supported on the base DE1?
No, none at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
No ports left over to plug them into, that sort of thing?
Well, what I ended up doing on that is to do a frequency or voltage to frequency converter. That's how the joysticks are interfaced to the FPGA. There's nothing like that on the DE1 board. So I had to do it on the analog board. So you could probably do some type of thing with, if you want to make a modification with one of these joysticks that has an up, down, left, and right. Just a single bit, you could probably interface that on there, but you'd be hacking into the DE1 board to do that. Probably wouldn't be worth it. Any other questions? If you want to see a demo of it, you just come by my table there and do it.
Cool.
That's all I have.
All right, thanks,
Thank
Gary.
you.
Thank you, Gary.
That is, what do you mean by that? Look, if you use VCS or VCC or MES or something like that, it doesn't have the FPGA and everything. The FPGA is like the cover.
Yeah, it definitely goes software emulation. I agree.
My problem with the software emulation is just the keyboard.
It's still using PS2 keyboard, so that,
Well, I mean, if I'm using MES, for example, my custom MES that can go 4 times.